Hi, my name is Michael Chikeen. The smartest people I've met have one common belief that us silly humans really don't know much. For example, we still don't know why planes stay in the air, or how Tylenol or even gravity works. Yeah, gravity. Look it up. In today's distracted, clickbait, misinformation age, I wish we could all be less certain, more humble, and a lot more curious. Admittedly, I've been known to struggle with all three. So, no more, no less, this show is my attempt to be that change. Thanks for joining me, and here we go. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today in the virtual studio, I have with me John Graham. John is a 3-time USA memory champion, a grandmaster of memory, entrepreneur, and he mentors high school performers, including a world record holder and national memory champion. He's performed insane mental feats on TV shows all over the world. Superbrain, Extraordinary, Superhuman, Incredible People, and these are all across the world, from China to Indonesia, USA, and to Russia, in front of as many as 400 million viewers. He also overcame daily panic attacks and decades of anxiety by using unconventional methods to release suppressed emotions and release the control conditioning of his mind. He mentors high achievers and helps them release their anxiety and panic attacks for good at releasepanic.com. So, Blake, basically, let's get into everything mind-related. John Graham, welcome to the show.
Yeah, let's do it. The mind is very interesting. Good. Like, there's some things that people don't know that they need to know, and all stuff in between. So let's do it.
Well, I guess how did you get started with the mind and the memory sort of training? I've read Moonwalking with Einstein, which was a book that really left an impact on me. Obviously, I'm a big Sherlock Holmes fan with the Memory Palace and things like that. So I know they're intertwined. So what was the impetus of that for you?
It was the same for me. That was the book that started it all in 2014, Moonwalking with Einstein. Because the subtitle is The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. And that just like grabbed my soul. And I was working a job I didn't like. I just needed something. And it was like a divine intervention. This was 10 years ago. So I was past school. I didn't know this stuff. I'm not a savant or a genius or naturally good at memory. And that's key for people to take right now is I learned mental techniques, strategies using visualization, imagination, mind's eye, things that we connect, like making connections and associations with information so that we not only remember it, but we know where it's stored. Because that's important. Like when we're searching our brain, how do we find the information? So it's just all mental techniques to encode massive amounts of information, learning decks of cards for fun, like memorizing a full deck of cards in order. That's a good party trick, or thousands of digits in a couple minutes, or, like words, books, names and faces, practical information too. So it started after that book. I didn't know anything until that point.
Well, I'm going to try to remember the line that stayed out with me for a long time. I think it was like, you could, if your life is very monotonous, then you could live a very long and healthy life while experiencing a very short one. And that really stuck with me, because I think that line was relation to in that book was in a memory palace, for example. Every stage of the memory palace, you have to make something extraordinary to look at so you remember on your way. And do you remember that analogy or how it might fit? Because that's like that. I remember I was reading in bed, and I remember putting the book on my chest and just thinking about it, because health has always been really important to me. And so the idea that controlling for all these different variables in your life to have a long life might actually lead to a uninteresting life that you didn't really live. Like, it felt like a gigantic slap in the face. I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, it's the way I live my life too, for the quality over the quantity, because a lot of people are trying to hack their mind and hack their life and live longer, be longer. And I'm like, well, I want the in between. I want the quality stuff. And that's been my story, like uncovering that. But I don't remember that passage from the book. It must have just been like something I knew already innately and was chasing and love.
Yeah.
But it's very related. Memory palaces are places that you know well, like your home or your office, friend's house, that you use mentally. You mentally go there and you store information. You turn the information into an image and you put that image on a piece of furniture, for example, and attach it. You can make it extraordinary, but you don't have to. But it's a good analogy for life too.
Right. And because you think of people now, I'm in my early mid 40s, and you start thinking, oh, okay, my memory's going a little bit, or it's not as great as it used to be. Um, but when you've expanded your memory in such a way, how do you think about the idea of a atrophying memory, or how memory, um, I guess, degrades with age? What have you thought about that?
Yeah, it's a perspective that a lot of people believe, and if you believe it to be true, it is true, sort of thing. I'm training a 70-year-old plus woman to compete in the U.S. Championship, and she can do things that most people would think is insane, like memorizing a deck of cards in a few minutes. Like
Right.
it's just a perspective and a belief system that we have. But I would say that most people believe their memory is fading because over time, I mean, stress is the number one thing with memory, but
Hmm.
they they fixate and notice the things they forget, or they notice on Facebook or a friend mentioned something that they forgot, and they must think, "Oh my gosh, I'm forgetful." When in
Right.
fact, there's plenty of stuff that the other person doesn't know. So it's selective memory of looking at all the failures and all the, oh, I forgot that moment, when in fact it's human. I'm a memory champion and I forget stuff all the time. It's like you don't want to remember everything. It's like, what are you remembering? What are you bringing your focus to? So if
Right.
you're in business, your focus in your life is like business, helping people, improving your life, and that stuff I'm sure you know really well. But there's parts that maybe you don't give your attention to that you might forget. So it's all a perspective.
And what has, in that same line, what has really expanding your mind about memory, and how important it is to how we live our lives. If we release, if we get rid of our memories, if we erase our memories, we kind of lose who we are, I think, in some respects. So how would you, what life perspective had you gained going so deep into kind of working that muscle that not many of us work?
Yeah. My viewpoint on memory has changed over the years. When I first started, I wanted to remember everything. I wanted to just gain knowledge and soak up all the books and know everything, because I thought it would give me everything I ever wanted, money and fame and, impress people, all this stuff. And in fact, it was a reflection of my inner world, believing that I needed all these things to feel happy. And now these days, I really don't want a lot of information and knowledge stored in my brain.
Hmm.
What's more important to me is, am I enjoying the things I'm in? Am I immersing myself and present in the things I like and flowing with that and not worrying about the rest? Because I've helped people over the years. Like I used to be the number one memory coach in the US on Google. Like you could Google me, I was there, number one result. And people want to retain all kinds of insane amounts of information. Like people want to memorize full Bibles, people want to memorize all the Cisco systems, people want to memorize
Jeez.
things word for word, like the Torah. Um, and it's like, why? Because it's right there. I could just refer to that book. I could
Right.
Google search it. I don't need to memorize phone numbers or grocery list. It's cool and all, but my take is like, yes, memory is important, very important. But what's your intention and goal behind all of it? And so that's my perspective now, is just, I think it's cool and all that I can focus and retain the things I want to, but I don't need everything.
Right. There's actually an episode of House MD that I love, and it's a patient who could remember everything, and she had a super fractured relationship with her one of her parents and her sister, because, and she said in later on in the episode that she just can't stop remembering every time she was wronged by someone in her life, and she goes, I wish I could get rid of this memory because I want to love these people, but every time I look at them, I have a tally of what they've done or not done to
Mhm.
me. And I thought that was really interesting and fitting with what you're saying, that like we don't have to remember everything. There's some things that you hope get a little bit more fuzzy, and then you can move on from maybe the not so pleasant stuff. Like I think if we could remember, if we could choose what to remember, it would be nice to have maybe a 4K image of some of the best times with our friends and families and the relationships, opposed to like, the seventh Psalm of some chapter in the in the Bible. So how have you learned how have you learned to use memory to optimize your life for contentment? I guess, like, is
Yeah,
that because that that
that's
that
the
seems
question.
like the path that you're on.
That's the question. So we all have these suppressed emotions, events in our lives, like you gave in that example of past events and people, things they've said that we fixate on and ruminate on, and we all do this, right? Whether you have depressed tendencies of fixating on the past or anxious tendencies of fixating on the future, it's all basically related to our suppressed emotions and memories. So what I've done is face those uncomfortable moments, because a lot of people think like, how do I get rid of these memories? How, like, they're haunting me, the things
Right.
people say. And if you learn how to neutralize the sizzle of those events, which you can, when you neutralize the sizzle, it not only doesn't haunt you anymore, those things release and make you more present, but the ripple of that event doesn't impact you to the present moment. That's what our conditioning is all these past events and triggers, botherings are impacting us now to this day, subconsciously, unconsciously, through reactivity, through negative emotions, through spirals, through ruminations. So my big thing was identifying all of those past things, not by digging in the past, because we don't need that. In fact,
Mhm.
that's harmful if we fixate on the past and dig, but by
Right.
utilizing all of my botherings, they're gateway points. Anything that bothers me is a gateway to one of my past suppressed emotions. And if I know how to neutralize those, I'm more content because I'm less blocked inside. These are all the things that are suppressed inside of me that are causing all my discontent.
Interesting. And I guess to segue a little bit, how old were you in relation to the memory stuff when you started having the panic attacks, or or did they precede the memory path?
Panic attacks started probably 2019.
Okay.
And like, there's a spectrum of panic, they're all the way from, like, if you've ever had one, it's like a wave of fear, of discomfort, adrenaline goes through your body and you wonder what's wrong, like what's happening, you don't know. Sometimes it feels on the extreme end like you're going to die, like you're going to pass out, heart attack. I mean, it mimics these intense events. You feel like one time my face went numb and I thought I was having a stroke.
Oh my God.
One time my arm tightened up, I thought I was having a heart attack. Like, they're very real and visceral. That's why they're terrifying. But 2019, I had a light anxiety panic attack in the first event of the World Memory Championships in China. I was in Wuhan, China, December 2019. True story. Sitting in the first event of a 3-day event, 3 days of 10 events. First event, I turned over the page, and the images on the page to memorize were blurry and they were upside down. Like, it's hard to explain. There were textured images that I trained for, but they were flipped. And so I was completely thrown off in my mind. All the demons came out, all the voice in my head, all the panic, and because I was basically telling myself I was going to finish top 5 in the world because I had the talent. I was that good.
Right.
And it just completely derailed me. So I was having very, like, fight or flight responses in my memory and my training. Like, I would have brain fog, I would freeze up, and I wouldn't be able to memorize. Things like
Wow.
that were starting to happen because of all the stress that was building, all the suppressed emotion that was coming to the surface. So that's when I was started really noticing the impairments it had on me.
Well, if you can explain what was it about? Like, was it an image that you had, like you were aware what the image should be, and someone printed it out wrong, or I'm wondering what that trigger was.
I mean, the trigger was I was highly controlling of what I wanted to happen. I had a score in my mind, I had a result in my mind. And just to flip that page over and for it to be completely not what I expected,
Right.
just
Shattered.
completely shattered me. And so in a normal response, if I'm not triggered by that, I would adjust. I would say, okay, everyone here is like has the same blurry-ish flipped images, and just do the best you can. But I couldn't
Right.
do that because I was so anchored and attached to being needing that outcome.
Right. And that's
That
not a great experience to roll into a pandemic with.
I mean, the pandemic hadn't happened yet, but yeah, it was the start of yeah.
Yeah, a few months later, while you're probably still recovering from that 400, million viewers situation. And so, how long was it until you started diving into how to use your mind and, I guess, discipline to try to undo these panic attacks?
It wasn't until last year, 2023, where it came to a head. I was having this a little over a year ago. I was having multiple daily panic attacks. Like it got
Okay.
that bad, and I hit rock bottom in my mind, and I didn't know what to do. At that point, it's a good thing because you have to go a different route. You were forced. It's like imagine someone having a heart attack. At that moment, they let their life changes. They say, "I have to eat healthier. I have to exercise. I have to make changes, huge changes." And it was that moment for me where I realized what I'm doing mentally. I'm trying to solve my anxiety and panic mentally, which is the mainstream route. It's labeled mental health, right?
Right.
But it's actually emotional health. And so when I learned that it was emotional health, I was able to resolve it within a few months. Whereas, 20 plus years before, I was like battling it mentally. Supplements, meditations, hypnosis, like all the, medication, all the mental route.
Right. That's really fascinating. Yeah, because I've explored this, speaking with friends on the show, um, about emotional and mental health, but I actually never thought about the delineation between those two words, because everyone would say they've done meditation to be able to control their emotions. They've done journaling. They've done all of these things, and what I think you're saying is that the path through is more acceptance of those emotions to get through to the other side. Is that around the lines?
Yeah. I mean, we have accepting it is a big word and it's easier said than done
Right.
because we unconsciously resist anything negative, anything that doesn't feel good, any uncomfortable emotion, we resist it. We don't allow it to do what it wants to do, right?
Right.
And so you have to realize what I realized. Every event in our life that we couldn't handle, that was uncomfortable, we were embarrassed, we were feeling lost inside, lonely, sad, whatever it was. If we didn't handle it, if we jumped into our head, or we escaped the moment, or we watched a movie, or we scrolled on our phone, or whatever it was, if we coped with it and we didn't handle it, it's stored in us. It's still inside of you.
Right.
It's still in your nervous system. It's a suppressed emotion. And that's what is causing all this mental health issues.
Havoc.
It's like it's a fire inside of us that activates, and it causes smoke. So what people do is they try to battle the smoke, the thoughts, the mind. But you're not getting to the root. The root is the emotion that's inflaming this. And there's a relation to mind and emotions, don't get me wrong, but it's the conditioning of the mind that holds us in it. But the deeper root is these emotions. So if we can fully process these emotions, like fully, they release for good. They're gone forever. And if you do that, if you're dedicated, I would mean like they were dedicated, if you're devoted to that and know how to do that, which is what I did, what I teach people, is it will release. And this stuff, you won't have the chronic anxiety, you won't have the depression, you won't have the panic attacks anymore if you resolve that.
That's very interesting because my first episode of the show was my experience with MDMA assisted therapy, and in that, not to go back into that story, but in that, halfway through, I started just sobbing and mourning the loss of my grandparents, because I was overseas when both of them died. I'd never had a chance to go home to the funeral and all those things, and I would have told you mentally, logically, that I missed them, how important they were to me, how much I loved them, um, what a loss it was, like all of these things. But it wasn't until I guess the amygdala was able to be quiet and I could face how devastating it was. And I think it felt like 15 minutes, but I think they told me I was crying for like 2 or 3 hours. And in the middle of that, I could feel what was like, it felt like an organ or an intestine was tied like a hose, and then it was finally unleashed or untangled, and then there was more blood flow. It was the fucking craziest feeling. And so it sounds like the thing that you're teaching or taught yourself to do, we'll get into that, is along those same lines, um, but maybe takes more work than someone going to ayahuasca or MDMA therapy, which is all the rage right now.
Mhm.
And I've been talking a lot about because I'm in the midst of trying to write a nonfiction book, and one part of it is I'm talking about emotional suppression, especially what we teach to boys as we turn them into men. And
Mhm.
one analogy that I'm kind of mixed. I need to edit it, but like that we have this dungeon inside us, and any emotion that we feel, we banish into this dungeon that has this dragon that we keep locked up, and the dragon just gets fuller and fuller, and we pretend that it's safe locked behind that gate, but eventually it's going to burn your whole life down. And it seems like that's what you were experiencing in these panic attacks. And I was hoping you could maybe take us a little bit, if it's all right, between the moment, I don't know if it got too bad or too frequent, that you realized that you had to change something, and then once you accepted that, how you went about creating whatever the system is that you've developed.
Yeah, really powerful. Like I would, if I'm a viewer, I would listen to what you said again because it's on point. For me, the dragon got out in the panic, and it was
Right.
extreme voltage in my body trying to come up. And a lot of people like again push it down, but you got to realize this stuff wants out for good. That's why it's going to keep happening whether you want it to or not. For me, I was going through daily multiple panic attacks, surges in my bodily adrenaline. Like I just was exhausted. I was so scared, like thought something was terminally wrong with me. Doctors couldn't find anything. So I'm here, I'm like laying in bed while my daughters are outside on a nice sunny day playing, and I couldn't stand the thought of them seeing me unwell. So I'm just escaping my life. And I'm
Mm.
not going out, and I just felt trapped in my own body and not well. Like I have everything I want. I got a wife, beautiful girls, I got a house, I got a car, I got like the business, I got the trophies. Like, why am I not well? And it just got to a really scary point where I asked for help.
Hmm.
I asked for someone to help my parents to help me, and I started sharing and talking about it, and it was a complete cathartic release like you had with that crying. And I just made a decision like I need to change dramatically what I am doing. And so from these, what happens is when you have these cathartic releases, okay, these suppressed emotions, you actually gain intelligence from that. Imagine all this stuff not as just suppressed emotion, but suppressed intelligence. This is what we want to access.
I'm
If
gonna
you
write
want to
that down.
expand your potential, you want to access these suppressed emotions because you're not going to expand by mentally repeating mantras and motivations and all this stuff. Like, you're not going to get there. So I started releasing massive amounts of this stuff by sharing, by being vulnerable, by crying, by letting it out, by feeling this stuff, this nastiness, not pushing it away, but just like surrendering to it. And that's part of the acceptance is like I feel insanely uncomfortable, but I'm gonna let it happen. And the more I did that, the more I realized I actually gained intelligence, and I knew I could see my patterns clearly. I could see what I was doing. I could see all the fears were illusions. I could see that I was holding a lot of shame. I could see that I was being manipulative and holding things in to get what I wanted. And I started noticing all this conditioning that I had. And so I just kept going. I kept feeling my emotions. I had cathartic releases, huge experiences like you had, like that blew me away. Like, those are the moments where your life changes because you're like, there's something here. When elephants of rage are floating off of your shoulders within seconds, you're like, something dramatic is happening and there's a truth to this. So I just kind of kept going, and a lot of light bulbs started clicking for me. I realized, number one, my nervous system was highly tense and dysregulated. So I immediately started learning how to relax all my muscles and let go of my mind. I learned how to unhook from negative emotions in the moment. And I learned how to have these cathartic releases from the past, like you had, these big boulders that are inside of me. How do I locate them and how do I release them? So I just religiously devoted myself to these methods. And they just kept working, and I just kept releasing, integrating, kept releasing, integrating. And within a few months, I wasn't having panic attacks anymore. I wasn't feeling heavy anymore. I wasn't having brain fog and palpitations anymore.
Wow. I had someone on the show talking who wrote a book about the guide to forgiveness, and she wrote a book and how she would forgive people every night and to just forgive and say these things before bed, and it seemed like she was releasing a lot of anger and resentment, which is along those lines, and how much better she felt afterwards. And I think that's also in the same line of releasing emotion into the world that is trapped inside you. I think they're for different purposes, but I think they speak to the same benefit. One thing that I'm really curious about in that story you just mentioned is that how are you going about, because like you can go smash up a rage room, go for a run, dance, all of these things,
Mhm.
cry, but how are you, for one, uh triggering that, okay, I need to release emotion one, and then I need to release emotion 1A, and then 2, and then 2Z? Like, how are you tracking that? And then once you were to tap each of those numbers or emotions, how would you go and exercise it to get, or not physically, but like how are you to, like the exorcist, exercise those emotions to get them out, and then we can get to integration later.
Yeah, well, every moment of the day that bothers you is a gateway to a trapped emotion.
Jesus.
So you don't have to go. This is the thing with therapy. You don't need to dig in your past. Like, obviously, we
Right.
know certain events, breakups, heartbreaks, deaths. They're obvious. Like, you know what they are.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff you don't need to search for, because you either don't need to know or it doesn't matter, because you don't want to ruminate in that.
Right.
And so if I'm bothered by someone commenting on Facebook or Instagram on a post of mine, or like some nasty comment I see, whether it's for me or another, and I'm triggered by that, that you are not angry because of that post. It's poking something inside of you from the past. So you don't need to know when it happened. But I started listing all this stuff and all the people that bothered me. And here's a big hint: most the stuff and the people that bother you are the closest people in your life. If you really subtly notice, it's your parents, it's your closest relationships. And not that these people are bad, this is a normal thing, but they're indicators in all of this. And so
Right.
I just started listing everything that bothered me, and I started sitting with those, like in a quiet, contemplative state. Because much like you, I had a huge cathartic moment with my grandpa. My grandpa, 90 years old, committed suicide. And I was like, it was completely out of the blue. Like, we've never experienced anything like that in our family.
That's
It was
awful. I'm sorry.
so crazy, devastating. And the normal emotion people get with death is sadness, right? I had a little sadness, but I had rage, like you would not believe, come up, because I number one, at the time, I didn't understand suicide. I did not understand how someone could do that, and because of my judgment, I held so much. Right, we can talk about that too, but I was ticked at what he did to the family, how he left, no, why, just devastated us. And so
Right.
there was one moment, I had been enraged for a month or two, and my friend goes, "You still love him?" And I was like, "I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't want to admit that I still love. I'm so mad."
Yeah.
And that night, I went, I went to bed. I hit my head on the pillow, and I was like, "You know what?" I said, "Grandpa, I do not. agree with what you did. I don't think I ever will. But I still love you. And I meant every word of it. So, number one, I wasn't attached to being right. I don't have to agree with you, Grandpa. I love you. And I meant it fully. You talk about forgiveness, letting go of this attachment. In that moment, in 10 seconds, me saying that, a huge elephant of rage lifted out of me. And I was like your moment, I was like, what the F just happened? It
Wow.
was so profound. Like the energy in the room changed. I felt lighter. And immediately I was like testing to see if I could still get angry. I went back to all the memories that were triggering me before, and I could not get angry. I could not. It was gone.
Right.
Where did it go? And so that moment really, really changed me because I realized I'm holding on to judgments. I'm holding on to being right. I'm holding on to outcomes. I'm holding on to so much stuff. I want to notice everyone that bothers me, make note of that, and make peace with it.
Right.
And that's what I did.
So, I guess if we have that forgiveness door open, how would you say if someone has? Because even after that MDMA session, over the next year or so, I started distancing myself from certain friendships because I could start connecting with how some of those relationships made me feel, the dynamics between them, even if they had been friends for a while. My perspective on their, I don't say utility because but their purpose in my life had changed, and my connection to them. And so, how would you recommend someone who wants to go, let's say, a forgiveness route of someone that used to be in their life that's no longer in their life, and but they still have anger or even or rage in, for example, like, is it as easy as saying like out loud, you hurt me, or like how would you go
Hmm.
about that?
Two things here. This is huge to explore because a lot of people think like, oh, if I need to block these toxic people out of my life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're still holding onto an anger or resentment or disgust towards them, we're holding on to that, and that's
Totally.
poison. And so it's good that you notice these things. Forgiveness, and this is profound when I realize this. Forgiveness has nothing to do with right or wrong. Forgiveness has nothing to do with what the other person did. Nothing at all. Forgiveness is about forgiving our judgment of what happened. Meaning, we have a perspective, they have a perspective. It's like it's like all of us pointing a telescope at the same object from different angles. We're all seeing the same tree or the same whatever we're fixating on, but we're seeing it from different perspectives. So we're incomplete in the perspective of the tree or whatever we're looking at. They have a piece of it, I have a piece of it. It has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's just perspective. So when you forgive someone, again, you are taking ownership of the stuff you're holding on to and forgiving your judgment of what happened. Again, leaving right or wrong out of it. Because if you can see the other person's perspective,
Right.
judgment free, you crack your heart and your mind open and you start seeing more and more perspectives. That's the goal. And so with other people in my life that I disagreed with or resented or whatever, I went at that too. And the thing is, you don't need to physically apologize or give a note or anything like that. You can if you want, but you have to identify what are you attached to. You have to fully feel that emotion, and you have to know how to let that go and make peace with it so that you don't hold and harbor that resentment or whatever
What
inside
do
of you.
you mean you have to know how to let that go? That's what I'm coming to you for.
Yeah.
So like if someone can identify what's a typical thing. I don't know. Either a former relationship or a former friend, or mm, a falling out, a estranged parent-child sort of situation. If there's these resentments that are so strong over time, how do you know how to let something go? Because you can even traditional therapy will give you empathy for the person and see it from their perspective and try to understand them, etc., etc. And that's proven to work, and I've had it work in my life. Friends have said it's helped for them to understand people that have aggrieved them. But I'm trying to get at more. What is the mechanism to
Hmm.
release the valve that has that trapped emotion of resentment that no longer serves us?
Yeah. Well, that's feeling the emotion fully. So when you think of this person, can you sit in that discomfort of that emotion? Because the process of releasing an emotion has, we all try to mentally do it, like understand it, and that gets in the way. Your mind will completely get in the way of this process because it's a heart process.
Right.
That's the first thing I had is all this understanding mentally of the person and compassion and gratitude, whatever. Like it's good to understand, but it gets in the way. So when you think of a person and you sit with it, can you sit in that discomfort and just feel that emotion? Like just keep bringing your attention to that feeling and relax to let it, because you're allowing this stuff to come up and just work through you, process. And that,
Right.
if you're a left brain person like I was, it's hard to do initially because you're trained to like, oh, am I doing this right? What do I do next? Like, do. So, number one, could you just feel the emotion? The second thing that, again, this is like I don't want people to get too mental here, but when you have resentment or anger, most likely you're holding on to being right. I'm right, they're wrong.
Sure.
That was a big one for me. I had to be right, and even subtly. We're conditioned to
Right.
like feel righteous.
Right.
Or this is unfair. If you're holding on to fairness or righteousness, you're holding on to that. And so just understanding that can help you let it go. Meaning I'm holding on to being right. Can I let go of the need to be right? Let them believe what they want to believe, what happened, but just feel that emotion. And can I put myself in their shoes? This is who highly discomfort. While you're sitting in that emotion, thinking of this person, can you imagine being in that person's shoes, like literally looking down and seeing their shoes, seeing their calendar, seeing their life, thinking about maybe why they, how they grew up? Can you do that? Because when you do that from your heart, not from your head, and try to understand this person from a non judgmental view, from a curious view, you'll start to understand what happened from a different perspective. And you'll be able to release that.
Hmm. I imagine in a lot of these moments where you're the emotion is sadness or disappointment, and people will cover up with anger and rage, and I would assume part of it is to have a pattern interrupt to understand how quickly that sadness or hurt turns to anger to protect yourself from feeling that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any of that experience that you had during your journey, we'll call it, where you had to identify? Because not too long ago, I had to realize I wasn't coding sadness properly. I was coding it as restlessness, um, some anxiety, anger, like all of these things. And it took me several months, and even now, I have to sit with myself and be like, "Is this sadness? Do I need to let this out or whatever?" And so I was wondering if you had any similar experiences when you were trying to let go of all those suppressed emotions.
Yeah, I think there's stages to this. Initially, people, it's helpful for them to identify, oh, what emotion this is. Is it sadness? Is it overwhelm? Is it a cocktail of emotions? The truth is, you don't need to know what emotion it is, because if you fully surrender into the feeling will guide you to what you need, how to process it.
Hmm.
Meaning, like there, and a lot of times there's stages to this. So there are three basic negative emotions. Only three: sadness, anger, and fear. You can really group any negative emotion into one of those three, the root. Okay. They all build on sadness. So without sadness, you can't have anger or fear. So sadness is the belief that I'm incomplete, I'm lacking something. The moment you believe you are lacking something or incomplete, like I miss this person, I need this person in my life, or I need money, or I need love. So now sadness comes into play because you're lacking something. And because you're lacking something, we try to feel better. So we try to attached to something. That's where anger comes in. Anger means you're attached to an outcome. I need this outcome to be happy. I need this person to come back into my life, or I need this money, right? Or you're attached to being right, attached to fairness.
Right.
That's where anger comes from. I'm attached to those things. Now, if you don't get what you want, you're still going, fear can come in. Because fear is the belief that I'm losing control. I'm attached to this stuff so hardly for my happiness that it's not happening. I'm losing control. And now fear sets in. So I say this is for people to understand they kind of build on each other. You can't have fear without sadness. It all starts with sadness. So what I'm really trying to say is these will slowly unravel as they need to be. I really don't want people to get in their heads and think what emotion it is. I really just, the more you can just feel that emotion, it will guide you to how it wants to release. So oftentimes crying will release it very powerfully. Sometimes you get shivers down your spine or your legs or goosebumps. That's a good release point. You'll feel a deep exhale, release, like a relaxation. But if you sit in that emotion and be with that emotion, it will work its way through and you'll know what to do intuitively.
And as you mentioned, to pay attention to things that bother you throughout the course of your day or interactions with other people, etc. What about the, because it said that anger is an evolutionary emotion. Like it does help us for certain things to understand when maybe we're being violated or treated poorly, etc. So how are you parsing the idea of, in the moment when I feel angry because the thing that's happening is making me angry, and when this is just bringing something up that is because of my past experiences with people or things, etc.
That's a good question. I mean, the important answer is we have to just allow that emotion to happen. Like we can't get in our heads right away and figure it out. That's where a lot of people go wrong. Is the moment they feel something intense, they try to jump into their head and figure out either where did this come from or how do I fix this? How do I resolve it and get out of this?
Right.
So that we jump into our head, and that's the last thing. That's why we have anxiety. That's why we suppress emotions, because we dissociate with them and try to solve them instead of be with them. So the first thing, no matter what, is I have to be with it, as uncomfortable at it as it is, without analyzing where did this come from, what do I need to do to get rid of it. Because by trying to get rid of it sooner, we'll only keep it. You're attached to, like, you're not allowing it to happen, you're pushing it away. And so the mental process can come in later. When it's resolved and released, you can say, okay, what was I attached to, or where did this come from, if you want to.
Right. And how are you feeling now? Like, how long did it take you to get to a point where you feel like you let out all the pockets of madness that we all keep inside of us, to a point where you said, okay, now I'm at ground zero, and from here I'm just going to experience life differently than I did before, that led me to this physical state?
Yeah, it was 2 to 3 months where I felt like a new person, because I anxiety for me was waking up with dread and heaviness and not looking forward to the day and wondering what's wrong. Like, I didn't have that anymore. So it's a completely new perspective, a lightness to my day, a presence to my day, a groundedness. And I don't think that all of my stuff is gone. I still think there's things there that poke me, but all the major boulders in the dam are released. I can comfortably say that were
Right.
causing all this suffering, all the attachments too, the mental attachments and conditioning.
Huh. It's really interesting. So I'm in a couple weeks. I'm trying to schedule a PhD researcher from Scotland who specifically studies male suicide, and she was saying that, because we had a very long, amazing pre-call recently, and she was saying that there's, if I can remember, there's three Ds that they've tracked in men that are suicidal, or that are feeling that way. And I think one is denial of self, the other one is denial of emotion, and dysregulation.
Mhm.
And and in that it speaks a lot of things that you're saying about suppression and how it continues to build, because what she said is because how we socialize boys and men, because it leads to more disconnection and less connected friendships and familiar relationships, that if boys experience a certain amount of trauma, but then there's no way for them to let that out or to feel comfort over time, that's what like leads to a dam that is about to erupt, and unfortunately that maybe erupts into violence or unfortunately suicide or all of these things. And so how do you look at all this to say, how do you look at your life now? Because obviously things happen, you have a death in the family. Let's say your kids are bullied at school, makes you super angry. Your wife does something like all of these things are human things that happen throughout our lives. So how do you look at when these negative emotions that need to be felt happen in the moment, that are new, that they're not from yesteryear? How do you look at exercising that and moving forward?
Well, I think they are from the past.
Okay.
Every trigger that there might be a new traumatic moment, but it's built on the conditioning of the past, right? So yeah, that's another thing when people have an emotion like, "Oh, this is a new one, not a trapped one." No, I think they're all from old blockages, similar
Okay.
events that are poking you.
This
Um,
might be getting too Buddhist for me, but I want to examine it because that's what this show's about expanding how I think about things. So let's say I'm trying to take something drastic. Let's say you have a best friend that suddenly dies in a car accident or is murdered or something, like something really extreme. How do you track how you feel about this awful, tragic, unexpected event to being something in the past? Like, isn't it possible that we just need to feel the sadness from this person that we love that is no longer there? Why do you think it's still coded to something in our past?
but it's a condition. So yeah, this is a really deep. People might not like this answer or agree with me, and that's okay. We, from the very beginning of our lives, we develop separation for ourselves and others. We forget who we really are as a soul. And so when we lose things like our stuffed animal when we're young, or we lose things we're attached to, like we lose a friend, that builds a conditioning, a trauma conditioning in us that we need external things or people to feel happy. Right? So now we start seeking relationships, people, friends, things outside of us to make us happy, to keep us happy. And that's an illusion, because happiness doesn't come from other people. Happiness is an internal spring. There's an internal spring of energy inside of you that causes the feeling of happiness. So by seeking things to make you happy, you're incomplete. I'm seeking these things. It's an illusion. And so when I lose a friend, of course, as a human being, that's a horrific thing, like a car accident. And I'm not saying like don't be sad. I'm not saying any of that. But it's based on the conditioning that I need people and things in my life for me to be happy. Because it's a resistance of reality. We we fight for the things we want, and when we don't get them or the things we want, then we are completely blown open and disrupted. And so if we can let go of all these attachments, and yeah, this is Buddhist in a way,
Or
of course we'll still feel
stoicism, it
suffering.
sounds like.
What's that?
Sounds like the stoicism ideals.
Sure. I mean, it's releasing all of the preferences we have, attachments we have, so that we are okay on the inside. Because there's a well of happiness, of energy flowing inside of us at all times, but it's blocked. And so the more attachments and things we can release, the more we can feel happy. We would have a completely different perspective. Like two people can have a completely different perspective of a friend dying in a car crash. They'll both be devastated initially. I mean, that's a human thing. But over very immediately, one person can appreciate, not mentally, but internally, what that friend did for them and the lessons they're gaining from this and the evolution they're gaining from this moment. And the other person can spiral downward because they need that person in their life to feel happy when that's not true.
That's great. I really love because I really love that explanation because there was an equal amount of things I loved and disagreed with, like coming after one another, which I love these chats because I thought I was going to disagree with your last part about how two people would react so differently, but in the end, I completely see your perspective on that. Whereas because you're so attached that you need that person in your life, that part I completely agree with. I think where I take more umbrage with is that maybe some things I've been reading and learning about recently is that like they've even found neurons in the brain that is associated with loneliness. That is like a trigger kind of like hunger as we're social beings that we need to go out and find our tribe or find people. And so there's a kind of an evolutionary um, how do you say basis for these ideas, and even that like the more friends that we have, the bigger our brain grows, the more happy we are. And so I think the illusion is to thinking that, and it's a really like narrow idea of this masculine lone wolf thing, that we're okay on our own, that we have our, that we don't need so many friends, we have our little tribe, let's say a family or two people, and we're okay. I think that's the lie that I think that's the lie we're told, and that we tell ourselves sometimes to keep the fear at bay, that maybe we don't feel safe meeting other people. Maybe we don't feel safe because we've been betrayed by friends in the past, and things like that. And we're getting a little bit off topic, but my concept is that I think we do need people, and I think it's I do think the illusion is to believe that we can exist only on our own, and that we can. And it's not that we can't spring the idea of happiness and gratitude on our own, but I think it's through loving other people and finding other people who can love and respect us, where like real contentment stays in. And so I'm going to really examine the idea of like these new feelings that come up, how th- they're still going to be tracked to my past. Um, that's going to take a while
Well,
to
here's a
unpack.
perspective, right? Because everyone, we try to seek other people for our happiness, right? But the perspective we need, the truth is, other people, close people, any relationship, the role that other people have in your life is to be a mirror where they can mirror back these blockages. They can mirror back. So if you're triggered by someone close to you, or they make you angry or resentful, whatever, that is pointing. If I see someone and they make me angry, it is showing me, reflecting back, that I am holding on to something of a similar quality. So that trigger is showing me there people are mirrors. And that's really the role, is we shouldn't seek people for our happiness, because that's an illusion that will never happen, ever,
Right.
ever. People are to show you of what's trapped inside of you, how you can expand, even the closest relationships. That's the role of other people in our lives, for us to expand by facing the mirror, by looking in the mirror. So many people don't want to look in the mirror of the truth.
Right.
Other people are mirrors to you, pointing out all the stuff we have trapped inside of us.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you make that a bit of delineation between that other people aren't happiness, because I would agree with that. I think where I would draw the line is, say, other people I think are a way to, maybe that's what you meant inherently about to expand, but I would say other people are a way for us to expand and have more love in our lives. I think some people think that it's only available through family and children, etc. And I would just argue it's also available through friends or extended family, or like I think love is everywhere if we look for it. But I think a lot of us, unfortunately, there's this idea out there that we're better off alone sometimes, or we're better off in our own little castles. And I love this idea of even like the more we can process these things we're seeing either in mirrors or in how we're actually feeling, then we can identify for ourselves kind of the path forward. Is that what you've also felt,
Yeah, you're
experienced?
right on the love. Let's think about unconditional love. How do we unconditionally love people? Because that's the ultimate perspective, right? think of love as like, think of it in a different way, because humans define love as like hugs and kisses and intimacy. There's nothing wrong with that. Think of love as like an unconditional acceptance toward another person. So if I'm looking at someone that triggers me, I don't like, I don't agree with them, they did something wrong, how do I unconditionally love someone like that? Right? So we have to learn how to accept the parts of them that are reflecting back the trap parts of us. If I can fully accept and fully love the role that they have in my life, the betrayal and how it helped me, right? Whatever it is, if I can see that in them, it resolves that part of me. See what I'm saying? It releases that attachment and so by loving and accepting other people, we are also loving and accepting more parts of us.
Right.
If we love more parts of us and accept more parts of us that we've suppressed, then we naturally see and love other parts of other people. So it's the mirror. It's like, this is the work,
Right.
right?
And so I guess because I don't think we got specifically instructive. So let's say there's someone who's listening to this who's going through a fair amount of panic attacks, or they know they have a lot of anxiety, and it limits their life, it limits their relationships, etc. What is step one or one, two, three that they can start doing today or tomorrow to start, perhaps doing something that might generally help their anxiety?
Yeah. So I do have a 3-step process that I guide people through this so they can resolve it. We talked a lot about the third step, the what I call catalyst integration of taking the people and the things that really bother you, the boulders from the past, and releasing them.
Mm-hmm.
But the first 2 steps are probably more important to start with, or just overall. Number one is you have to have a fully regulated nervous system. Because if you're in anxiety, I mean, most people in this world are dysregulated. It means they're tense. It means they're always thinking, always doing. They're busy. They're just on. Their nervous system's on all the time, and can't harmonize. So we have to learn how to shut that nervous system off, how to release deep, deep tensions in our body, so that because the tensions are what's holding all the trapped emotions in. So what I do is very simple, and I guide people through this. I lay flat. I release the muscles in my body systematically. Just keep doing it. I release the control of the mind, which is harder, and I guide people through that. And surrender, like let go. So I can see my mind, I can see all this stuff being released. That has to be a regular practice. It's non negotiable. Because if we keep activated and tense and stressed and in the go, 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 we're never going to resolve anxiety, panic, depression. That's number one. And number two is how to unhook in the moment. Because here's the thing with therapy is good and all, ayahuasca, whatever you want to do to release these boulders. But if you release these boulders, but you're still not handling emotions every day, moment to moment, you're still going to keep piling stuff on. So we have to learn not just in a 30-minute session, but 24 hours a day. How do we process emotions? And I teach people that, how to stay relaxed, how to release this feeling, how to feel the feeling and release it for good, so that this stuff, as it's coming, as someone cuts you off in traffic, as you get a bad email, as whatever happens, you're not tensing and holding it in and piling more in. You're releasing, processing. And then the third step is the catalyst integration, is like taking the big boulders. This is the fun step, right? Of the past, and releasing the stuff. So you're regulating to allow your body to release more more easily. You're releasing the steam of the day as it comes, like as it processes, which gets rid of some of the rocks inside. And then you're releasing the boulders that are damming you up.
And is there a moment where, because a lot of this seems great for emotional regulation and releasing things that are holding you back, and at what point that is there a process in what you teach people that you can feel that there is enough, let's say, um, negative emotion in a situation or in a relationship where you can make decisions to rectify, to bring up with a friend that, listen, what you did hurt me, or with a partner that, okay, this is not a good feeling. I think we need to go to counseling, or we need to break up, or whatever. So what is the, again, I use the term, what is the pattern interrupt within feeling these things, where it's not about releasing it, it's about accepting it and then making a decision based on that.
Yeah, you're right. You have to choose a different path to end the pattern that's causing, discord in your life. That comes through that integration, meaning you can get all the advice from experts and therapists, or me, whatever, on what to do in a moment. Don't
Right.
listen to that, because once you start handling the suppressed energies inside of you that are keeping you in that pattern, and you integrate them, you will naturally see the pattern clearly that you were completely unconscious to. That's what the subconscious is all the stuff we're unaware of, but it comes to the surface, it integrates, and all of a sudden you see, oh my gosh, I'm in a manipulative relationship, or I'm manipulating people subtly, or I'm holding a lot of shame, or I'm being very defensive. You will see it so clearly that now you will know what to do innately. You don't need me, you don't need a therapist, you just will know. And that's the moment where you step in and make that choice, and you end the pattern, you end the ripple, and you expand. And so it's a natural process on your own. That unfolds beautifully if you do this.
So it's essentially, I like to use the analogy of, like, if you haven't, been, actually, if you're letting your emotions just run all over you, and you're not really accepting them, you're just letting them run roughshod over your life, or you're suppressing them. I think your emotional regulation muscle, or your emotional intelligence muscle, however you want to put it, I think is atrophied. And just like, if you wouldn't go back to the gym after 10 years without working out and try to lift your body weight, you'd end up in a hospital. So
Mm-hmm.
in this thing, you want to pick up like a half-pound weight and just start doing some reps. And so with your idea is that, like, slowly, as you're trying to lay on the ground and just accept things and how you feel, and when someone does something, you think about it and take it in. Is that kind of your idea of slowly building up this muscle of acceptance?
Mm-hmm. Everyone's different. I was the type of person that wanted to dive in the deep end and go to the nastiest stuff right away,
Right. Super
because
fun.
yeah, like, and it's hard. I admit some people need more time to step in. Like and now the analogy is a ice cold pool. Imagine the ice cold pool is all your suppressed emotions. Initially, you're going to dip your toe on that first step, and it's going to be freezing and painful. And you're only going to be able to hold your toe in that nastiness for 10 seconds, and then you're going to have to get out. And then you have to
Right.
warm up, and you're going to build your tolerance of safety. That's the thing. You have to become safer, feel safer with these emotions, which
Right.
that's the process. Everyone is different.
Well,
I
it
was the type of
depends
person.
what. Sorry, I was gonna say, it depends what things people went through in
Yeah.
their past that they're trying to exercise, of how strong, I guess, that emotional acceptance muscle has to be before you accept the really big one. Is that
Yeah.
is that accurate?
Yeah. Some people need, and a lot of people need to do the low hanging fruit, the smaller things that bother them first. And that's why I guide people through that 3-step process, where the catalyst integration, the big boulders, is the last thing we get to, because it can be very, um, very heavy for people to tackle that right away. And I don't want people to think they need to do that right away. So some people like myself, I dove into that pool, I cannonballed into the ice cold water, right, and went at it, and was able to handle a lot of it right away. Some of it I couldn't, because panic attacks are insanely uncomfortable to, like, allow that stuff to imagine allowing a lightning bolt to move through you and relax into that. That's hard.
Ugh, right.
That's what it was. That's what it felt like. So that's the process. It's not going to happen overnight. Some people will not be able to tolerate those big boulders right away, and that's okay. That's normal. I mean, they're intense. But the only way to release that for good is to feel that pain. That's another truth. It was stored as pain, and it will release as pain. It doesn't have to be, hours and weeks of voltage moving through you. It can move very quickly once you understand how to release the attachments. And that's what I guide people through, so they don't sit and stew and ruminate in it. Because People get mixed up when they try to handle this process because they jump in their head and ruminate. Am I doing this right? What do I need to release? What's the attachment? I'm like, no, get out of your head. That's why we're in anxiety. We're relying on this mind to resolve things, and the mind is only getting in the way.
So if someone is in their head, and they're trying to intellectualize the next sort of idea, um, your advice is to just feel it
Do
and, and take.
do not figure anything out. If you're in an intense emotion, do not figure out what to do about it. Meaning how to resolve it, how to get it over with, how to block it. That's just getting in the way. That's just pressing it down more.
The answer is to accept it.
Yeah, allow. I say non-resistance. Don't resist it.
Okay.
Allow it, accept it, whatever you want to say to yourself, to just be in your uncomfortable body or feeling.
Right. Well, there's a study I read recently about a gentleman who was in some crazy accident and he like lost all emotion, like probably a brain injury or whatever. And they found that he was, and because the idea is that we have in society this idea of the logical person, that without emotion you can be this very logical robot that like Spock from Star Trek. But what they found is that when this guy was absent of emotion, he could not make a decision. Like they asked him, well, when do you want to come back next week? And he just kind of stood there like blank faced until someone said, how's Wednesday? He's like, okay, Wednesday's good. And so I think this concept that we can separate head and heart, or you're in head and heart, I think it's kind of a false dichotomy. Whereas like just because they're physically two different areas, like the emotion is in the brain. You know, we can talk about the gut brain, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But like if we're not using our emotion as well as things that we can evaluate a situation, and then like, well, what are we doing? We have to have a strong mind body connection.
Mm-hmm. I
And
mean,
so I guess, go ahead.
in an example like that, the emotion is so intense that it was compartmentalized, and he just feels numbness or nothing. And that's very common with people with anxiety and people that I've worked with. They feel numb. They don't feel anything. But that in itself is something that you have to tap into. Because I can assure people, and this is again controversial, maybe, I don't know. But if you're someone who's numb emotionally, and again, I was too, I just felt paralyzed, like there's so much in there. If you sat, like if anyone who is that person would sit in their room or quietly for 2, 3 hours with no stimulus, no phone, no nothing, and sat there, I can assure you a lot of stuff would come up. And there's your gateway. That's your portal to resolving, right? It's it's scary to think about. I mean, like the worst punishment we have for people is
Solitary.
isolate. What's that?
Solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement. Thank you. That's the worst punishment. But when we realize what's really going on, it's actually a gift if you understand what's going on. Not, I don't want anyone to do this like on their own, but like if you sat uncomfortably for an hour, stuff would come up that you can resolve. It's not a punishment.
Yeah.
This
I
stuff
hear
is
what you're saying.
inside of you that wants out. Are you going to push it away further and numb yourself and cope? Like, no judgment, please, no judgment. We all have these things, but you have a choice. Do you want to push this down more, or do you want to resolve it?
Right. Because in those solitary confinement situations, or if you're left by yourself thinking these negative emotions, I guess the struggle is always because people are trying to fight it. They're trying
Yes,
not to have these
yes,
feelings. They're
yes.
trying not to accept it. They're
Well,
trying
how do I
not to
stop it?
all these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Right. And I would, one more thing, I want to be respectful of your time and not go too long. Um, I would challenge you to think in terms of if you're working with men, because I interviewed, he was an ex professor in the University of Amsterdam, at Vingerhout's, and he was an expert in crying and negative emotion. And one thing he said that, man, I think about all the time. He said about how sadness is the companion of love, and that you can't have sadness without love, and vice versa. But you also cannot turn down one and heighten the other. You can't say sadness is inconvenient and turn up love. That's just not how it works. And we talked about how in men or in boys, we kind of take away both volume levels from them. And so when they're older, you really don't have either, and it's hard to really know what you think or what you want. And so I would argue it's not really in those cases, and obviously that can happen to women as well, but in those cases, I don't think it's a choice of suppression. I think it's become so incentivized throughout their life
Conditioning.
that it's just complete conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have to learn how to pick up that point one. Like they can't, if we're talking about emotional muscle again, they can't even pick up a grain of sand without having a little bit of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in that, with your clients, I'm sure you definitely have your work cut out for you to get people. I imagine once they have even accepted step one, then it's easier. But have you found it's difficult that when they show up, like it takes some work to even understand how to get into that non-resistance?
Yeah, some people it's because of the conditioning, like you said, and men are more prone to this because we're more left brain. Where that's a masculine energy of control, of structure, right? We are conditioned unconsciously to push these things away. We don't even realize we're doing this, and so we have to. I don't like the word unravel it, but we have to recondition ourselves to see it and to allow it, to accept it. You can unconsciously condition yourself to start accepting these things if you know where to look. Like I said, all the stuff that bothers you is a gateway
Right.
to all this stuff. Um, but you're right. Everyone is massively conditioned. And that's why everyone tries to treat it by hacking their brain and like looking in their brain. But the conditioning is what's like the lid on top of the Pandora's box. It's keeping everything in and storing everything. We don't want to lift, we don't want to try to hack the lid. We can go right into the box and start dissolving these things. And then over time, the mind will catch up and recondition and
Right.
understand this process. Like we really, what I'm really trying to say is we do not want to try to attempt to solve this by mentally understanding and hacking the mind here in the conditioning. We just condition ourselves to see the trapped emotions and to feel them so that they can release.
Right. And I guess on a point for us to close off on, if there's someone listening that really deals with panic attacks or so much anxiety, like you have and they think that this is just how I am, this is never going to get better, or know someone, like is there a pep talk you have for them?
Well, I mean, if someone's listened this far, they already know a lot of what they need to do. It's now a matter of, do I want to keep maintaining it, managing it, pushing it down unconsciously, keep doing what I'm doing, knowing that it will never resolve? Or do I want to learn how to access this trapped block, the stuff that's blocking me, release it, release the conditioning, the control I have in my mind, and release it for good? And that's what I help people do. I mean, the pep talk is, I'm talking to myself when I was going through this. What you're doing isn't working. Clearly, there's a different. You have to go the opposite
Right.
route. You have to realize it's emotional and not mental. And do you want to take the red pill or the blue pill? You know.
Right. Yeah. That biggest first step. I really love the idea of suppressed intelligence. I think that's also very very true, but never thought of like that, which I think is profound.
Yes.
So, and
Real quick
anyone
on
that,
that. Yeah.
what was that?
I was gonna say real quick on that.
Yeah.
Your potential is like circle bubble, and there's suppressed parts in there, untapped potential. Suppress the parts of you that you pushed away in a box. Tap into that. That will naturally expand you. You will not expand through your mind, through mentally coercing new beliefs and conditioning and ways of thinking. Like that's a really slow, laborious way. Your mind's limited. There's an infinite amount of potential inside of you that's trapped and boxed in. So this is the route to expanding your potential and going within. It's not through the mind, which sounds crazy coming from a mental champion, but it's not through your mind. It's through the emotions, the suppressed stuff inside of you.
Right. I love that. Yeah. So everyone who wants to find John, go to releasepanic.com, and good luck to all you guys out there feeling your feels. John, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. This was a super fun chat.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Michael, for going there and being curious yourself because it helped others with that.
So thanks for listening to No More, No Less. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. So please subscribe and rate the show if you enjoyed it. It'll help me create more amazing content and get that next little bit of validation that I so deeply crave. If you did enjoy it, well, that sucks. But to make sure, I think you should listen to my next 10 episodes and then decide. I mean, come on. Rome was not built in a day. I'm just getting warmed up here, guys. So thanks again. See you next time.